Well, I think I've like narrowed things down.
All right.
So.
Let me see. Have you? Is this up to date here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because I changed it. So.
So what you learn about learning? Okay. So talking now about your literature review. How are you thinking about organizing your lit review?
Well, I was thinking about like the questions.
Oh, the research questions?
The research
Okay.
questions. So maybe once I have like that settled, then I can start. Because I was thinking like one of the questions can be what aspects do teachers consider when changing their lesson? Like do they consider like the time or like the students or like I don't know.
Okay.
Or another one would be what information do teachers believe is relevant in the lesson plan? Like, does it help them if they have the time or like the assumptions or anticipated problems?
All right. Any others? Or just those two?
I only have those two.
Okay.
Because one of the other question is, how many teachers do I have to observe? Like,
All right. Before we answer that, let's go back and discuss these two questions again. So let's look at the first one again. And let's think of a couple of ways we can articulate this question. So can you repeat your first research question
yeah,
again,
what
please?
aspects do teachers consider when changing their lesson?
All right, so you're asking what aspects. So let's try to think about another way of saying this. If there's thinking what you would examine. So what aspects, how else can we ask this question about, thinking here you have in step 2, you've mentioned you will examine their classes by analyzing the time spent, their behaviors, attitudes. So kind of thinking about those things that you're wanting to examine. Can we include some of those things into the research question instead of using the word aspect?
Okay, so maybe.
And feel free to use like another question word like how, when, why.
Or can I just say
with
like
whom.
why do teachers change their lesson plan?
Okay, all right. So why? All right. So why do? What else? Why do teachers?
Why do teachers? Because I have time, right? And then I
Uh-huh.
have the reflections.
Right. Like when one would be like maybe when. When do they decide to change if they and that's we're assuming that they are conscious of this, so which they may or may not be, but you could say when do they decide to change or modify their class, right? And again, they may not realize it at that time, but when you go back and ask them, you say, okay, I see that you have, your lesson plan like this, and you did this, and this was different. When did you decide to make that change? Okay. You could also ask why.
Yeah.
Why did you, right? So there are two possibilities, the when and the why, but thinking of this difference between the lesson plan and their actual class. And so the next question would be, do you want to ask specifically something about the time of the activity, the duration of the activity, or the sequence of the activity, or what else? Thinking like what what other ways they could deviate from the lesson plan, or even omit. Let's say they omit
Why do they decide to omit
an activity. Now, you don't have to be maybe that perspective, but or that specific, but these are things to try to think about in your research questions to try to cover as many of these aspects as possible. That way, we don't use the word aspect, but that you use something a little bit more specific that is aligned with step 2, with what you're going to examine. So maybe the when, probably the why for sure, right? Why did you deviate here? You might look at, if you do a how question, this would be more your research into how they changed it. So did they changed it by time? They changed it by omitting something.
By
So
adding.
right. So you could complement. You could have one question about the how, and which would be more your observation, and then the why would be their interpretation.
Right. So I can have like why do teachers decide to modify or change like their lesson plan, and the other one would be how they how they change their lesson.
Yeah, and you can even be
during
more
the class.
specific if you want to focus only on duration of the event and the sequence. So why did they decide to change the duration? Let's see, the duration of the activity or the sequence. So you are stating, okay, you're only going to focus on those 2 aspects.
I have to make it specific, or
Well, if
it's
that
more
is,
helpful?
it would be helpful if those are the 2 areas that you really want to focus on. Okay, what I want you to think about is trying to capture in the research question a little more specific, if possible, what you plan on observing, because just so it's clear for you as far as what you want to examine. So if that doesn't interest you, if you want to focus on something else, that's fine, but I'd rather us be a little bit, I think we can be perhaps a little bit more specific, thinking about what you are going to be looking at as far as how they modify their classes. Trying to think what else. Is there anything else that comes to mind as far as what else you want to research as far as how they modify their classes?
No, I think yeah, because I was taking it like into something. I was thinking about something different, but yeah, this is.
Well, what were you thinking?
No, the what they think is important to include in the lesson plan, but that's not something like I can.
What they feel is important to include. Okay, I mean that could be because your analysis is going to be their lesson plan and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So you might include some of that, what you just mentioned, in their own planning, because you're going to be asking them perhaps, okay, I see that you planned here, and you might, yeah, so in your interview, part of it's going to be their planning,
Mm-hmm.
part of it is going to be their class. So I think that what you just mentioned, you can include that still by, applying some interviews and asking them to reflect on their syllabus, on their lesson plan rather, and so that would be kind of a part of also the
Yeah,
research.
but that's not like one of the research.
It would be like the
questions.
right. So your the thing that comes to mind for me is thinking about why do they deviate from either these 2 things, the duration of the activity and the sequence. I think those are the 2 main ways that they could deviate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, this is all assuming that you are choosing teachers who are are comfortable with writing out a fairly detailed lesson plan.
Yeah.
And so that would be one thing that you would have to try to find. Going to your question about how many teachers, obviously you're going to need, you're going to have to observe these classes, and you're going to need probably some interviews, and I don't think you're going to involve too much the students, I don't think.
No.
So I think you could uh, several options. I mean, you could focus on a case study on one teacher and do a lot, observe more, have more interviews, and try to get more information from one teacher. Or you could do kind of a compare contrast between either 2 or maybe 3 teachers. I don't think I would go over 3 teachers, just because you want to have enough time to actually observe some of the classes. So that would be something to think about. I would say anywhere between 1 teacher and to 3, and then with the idea being fewer teachers, more observation, more interviews, right? More teachers, it would be less, but we don't want to go, I would say, more than 3 then, because you may not have enough time to do the interviews and the observations. So.
And how many times, how many classes do I have to observe?
Well, it'll depend how many teachers, but let's say you have 2 teachers. Okay, I think we have 3 weeks, right, for data collection?
Yeah, I think
so. Ideally, you would want to, I would say, try to observe at least 3 times a week. Like let's say they have a class, 1-hour class, and they meet 5, Monday through Friday. If you could, I would say probably 3 times a week, more or less, at least, for each one. Because you're not doing a discourse analysis, so it's not going to be a lot of transcription. You're going to be basically timing the events, and so your observation sheet would look very similar to, you would break it down into activities. So let's say whatever, you can call this whatever you want, but some sort of introduction, call roll. So the introduction would include greetings and calling roll at the very beginning if they do that, and you would have a start and finish time. So you're just tracking the time of each one of these activities as you observe, and then go back and kind of compare that to the syllabus. Right. And so I think you could stand to observe quite a few classes, because it's really not going to take much time to collect the data from your observations. But what you want is enough observations to look for tendencies, to look for patterns of behavior. So you do want to get in, I would say, at least 3 a week, preferably 5 if they're doing it once a week, and I think, or once a day. I think the ideal class would be something like an hour session Monday through Friday, where you're in there almost every day for 2 or 3 weeks, and looking for these types of patterns. Do they typically stay with the lesson plan or not, and that type of thing.
Okay.
Now, all of this that we're talking about here, I think my suggestion would be to find other research to see, do they have similar research questions, or can you get any ideas from research questions that others have done? Because that would be the ideal thing, is to try to adapt or even use other research questions based on prior research that you can implement for your purposes. Okay, so we're kind of talking, without referring to any other prior research specifically. I would take what we're talking about here and take a look and see and compare what others have done, and see if further modification is necessary. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't found a lot of research. I found a lot of theory, just on lesson planning and the types, but a research, I found only one, and it's not very related to.
Okay. So nothing a lot related to.
Not to investigating about lesson plans. It's more.
Because one is the implementation of lesson plans, right? It's not just the theory. Try your best to find literature on the implementation of lesson plans, not just what makes a good lesson plan. Because what you want to find out is that those cases where why would someone kind of deviate or modify their plan. So the when question I think is important because and maybe it's part of the why whenever you talk to your teachers, but when you talk to them, they may give you answers like, well, I decided before class to make the change, maybe, or early on, maybe from the very just right before the class. So you'll have to look for teachers that are doing detailed lesson plans, that are doing it periodically, like for every class, or maybe they do a scheme of work, but it still has to be in a level of detail where it's pretty much timed, or at least the sequence of events are in order. That's the thing, because if you're looking at the time, you can't really compare unless they are planning, saying, okay, today I'm going to spend 10 minutes on this activity, 10 minutes on this activity, 10 minutes on this activity, and they write that out. This is the level of detail that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna serve in the STAR program, and their lesson plans ask them for.
Oh, they ask them for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
It's even
Good.
information that they don't even need. Like, what is the use of the language, the form, the function? They
Well,
ask them for
you
all
can
of
take
that.
anything from there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just talking about this, thinking like if there's even further detail that you want to incorporate in there, that's fine. Just ask yourself if you need to include it in the research questions.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, certainly we can go more specific. What I'd like for you to determine though is more or less what you're going to examine in step 2. Try to include that in the research questions.
Yeah.
Okay. But as far as research, let me see here. Because I would like to, if possible, get at least 1 or 2 research articles that are fairly related to your research. Buenos días. Okay, examining an assumption of linkage between lesson planning and implementation. This might be something of use. Let's see. Okay, the abstract is pretty brief, but you might take a look at this. It's called Examining an Assumption and
Assumption?
Examining an Assumption of Linkage Between Lesson Planning and Implementation. And I'll also upload our conversation here, so you'll be able to see this. But this might be something that is helpful, and you see what terms I'm using. But try to find something about lesson plan and implementation, or employment, or planning and implementing a class, and to see what kind of articles you get. You don't need a lot, you just need a few. And if you go, let's see, to best practice lesson plans, try to go directly to what they state about implementing the lesson plan. So it's not don't spend a lot of time on what makes a good lesson plan. It's more about
a lot of that.
right, and there's tons. So it's really not even that. I mean, it's more about you finding out what drives teachers' decision to change and when that happens, I would say. So it could happen before the class, during the class, but during the class did the students do something to say, okay, I need to modify. So that's kind of, try again to find research. Go ahead and start developing your theory, but try to spend a couple more days looking for research, and because I would like if you could find maybe 2 or 3 really good articles that are related, or in even books too, if there are books that are related, because we just want to make sure that your literature review is aligned to your actual research, right? So it's,
and for like the literature review, I can include like what is the lesson plan, like all of that general information.
Yeah, you can just, my recommendation would be not to focus too much on that. So you might have one section at the very beginning to describe, but I wouldn't spend a lot time on that. Hopefully you can get more information about the actual implementation, the drivers, the decisions, why teachers modify, why they would modify, because that is what you're really researching, and you want to find out if that's similar to what you will subsequently observe.
So it would be like, what is the lesson plan? Like maybe you can include like the types of lesson plan, like what is included in a lesson plan.
If you know that, for example, you want to focus on START program, I would just focus on pretty much the type of lesson plan that they do. So, you could say this is what typically is included in a lesson plan from the START program, and maybe that's based on some other types of lesson plans, but that you talk, because there are so many different ways you could plan a lesson plan. I don't think it's good to talk too much about other types of lesson plans that really that are really different than what you plan on observing. So if you already know the START and you know kind of what's included, talk about that lesson plan specifically.
Okay,
does that make sense?
So it would be like the type, that one, and what is included in that.
Right, pretty much that one type. And maybe again, that type is based on other, classic types of lesson plans, right, that you could talk about, but it's related to pretty much that one type. And again, not overly talk about. I mean, just bring it up at the beginning. I would say that would be the least important. You kind of describe what the lesson plan is, and then the rest of it, you might have 2 sections on why teachers would need to modify their lesson plans. Hopefully, you can find some information about that. And I'm just looking here to see if there might be another article.
Siempre a las 2 en una bolsa y luego los metes abajo. Y a veces nos quedamos aquí. Eso, imagínate. No, sí te hubiera buscado yo, pues.
Do you have the one article that you did find with you today, or?
No, I don't have it with me.
Do you have a copy by chance of the syllabus for the STAR program? Or not the syllabus, the lesson plan? Do you have a copy or of what typically is included in that lesson plan?
No, I don't have, well, all my friends work in STAR program, so I can ask them maybe.
Okay. So I would get a copy of that and see if there's something there that might help you kind of choose what direction you want to take this. All right, yeah, let's see, how teachers plan lessons. Okay, this might also be helpful. How teachers plan lessons. That might be another component, another aspect of your research, how they plan. Because another thing to think about is looking at how they plan and looking at what happens in the classroom and how they plan to also I'd feel more comfortable if you found a couple of research articles that really relate to this, so we can kind of narrow this down here. So try to give it, if you have a chance between today and tomorrow, do another search and let me know if you can find additional research. Okay.
I haven't been looking for implementation. Maybe that's like the keyword.
Try that. Try implementation. Try EBSCO.
Yeah.
Gail, Eric, Mextisol, and Learning Journal, which is also available through the database at the university. or language learning. Sorry, this is available, and this is a very good journal that you might check. A lot of it is qualitative or quantitative research, but you still might be able to get some ideas. Okay, so hopefully with those journals you should find something, and also eBay for books. You can find that. So let me know before our next tutoring session. Just let me know if you're able to find what you're looking for, and if not, maybe we can have another discussion to see kind of what.
Okay.
Because you might, in the process of looking for these articles, find another slant. I mean, I'm not proposing we change anything. It's just what direction, what specific direction do we want to take it?
Okay.
And so you might get some additional ideas by looking at other research. Not so much looking at just what is a lesson plan, but more about the implementation or evaluation even.
Oh, okay.
You could look at it like, how does a teacher evaluate their own implementation of a lesson plan? So you have the planning, they have a class, and then they reflect on that class. So that might be another kind of turn that you could take that's still very much related to what you're proposing here, but we're looking now more of like reflection, and there's tons of information about the reflective teacher. So maybe that might be a better way to approach it. Still looking at this idea of how the teacher changed, right? How they changed or modified their class, but looking at it from a reflective practitioner standpoint. Okay? So in your search terms, look for reflective teacher, reflective practice, reflecting in action. Sean, S-C-H-O-N. He's somebody you might want to look up. This guy here, Donald Sean. And this is a book, The Reflective Practitioner. Now you may not find the whole book, but you might find some articles from this guy. So this might be this might be of some help. So maybe the reflective practitioner, or reflective practice might be another option.
Okay.
But let me know, and don't, if you're not sure, let's meet again and discuss it and figure out, because you need to decide pretty soon here, what direction, so you can start writing up your lit review.
Yeah, I'll check it like this weekend, and on Monday.
Okay.
Well, if I haven't found anything, then I'll see what.
Yeah, I mean, if you find something great, go ahead and start writing up your theory. But if you do have doubts, let me know.
Yeah.
And try to do as much as you can each week, uploading your literature review in Google Drive, so I can kind of each week we can look at your progress, and I can make comments.
Okay.
There, so.
Yes.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.